Marketing Your Private Practice is a podcast where you'll learn easy to implement tips and strategies to grow your business without spending all day online. I'm your host, Colaiacovo, and I teach practitioners the Thrive marketing method to create simple and streamlined plans by focusing on long-term strategies, not just social media. Discover ways to spend less time on your marketing, attract more clients, and build the financial freedom that comes with a thriving practice. One where you have time left in your day for the people and things that matter to you. What would happen with your private practice if you had an accident today and ended up in intensive care in the hospital, unable to speak or do anything? What happens to the clients who are booked in your calendar for tomorrow? How will they even know anything has happened to you? This episode of Marketing Your Private Practice shares why having a backup disaster plan is critical to the longevity of your practice and how you can plan for disasters, even small ones, because they can have big effects on your practice. Let's get to it. Practitioners like you deserve a thriving practice helping your clients live long, healthy lives. I'm Colaiacovo, marketing strategist for practitioners and dietitians, and I'm here to tell you that marketing your private practice shouldn't be complicated or take hours a day. I help bring the joy back to running your practice with simple marketing plans that actually get you clients, so you can spend your time doing more of what you love. The Marketing Your Private Practice podcast shares actionable strategies and time-saving tips that build your confidence and skills when it comes to marketing. Learn to spend less time on your marketing, how to attract more clients, and build the financial freedom that comes with a thriving practice. One where you have time left in your day for the people and things that matter to you. Hey, private practice heroes. As the CEO of your practice or business, there are going to be days that you have to make hard decisions that affect your business and your clients. Decisions like the time I fired someone who was in the ICU. Yep, I did that. I fired someone who was in critical care in a hospital. Now, in my defense, I didn't know she was there. It's not anything I'm proud of, but I will tell you, I learned a lifelong lesson from that experience, and I want to share it with you today. The lesson is not about how not to fire someone while they're in the ICU or make hard decisions. It's actually about the importance of having a backup or disaster plan so that if something happens, you are ready for it. Now, you might think that a private practice or small business, you don't have a need for a backup disaster or emergency plan. But I'm going to challenge you on this by asking you one simple question. If you had a horrific accident today, and I really don't want you to do that, so don't, but let's just say you got hit by a bus and ended up in the ICU, unable to speak or do anything, what would happen with your practice? What will happen with the clients who are on your calendar for tomorrow? Would anyone have clear instructions on what to do to help you and the people connected to you through your practice? If not, then I'm telling you right now, you need to think about having a backup or disaster plan for your practice. The unexpected can happen at any time and take you out. Yet so many practitioners and business owners I've worked with over the past 14 years, very few of them were ever ready for that moment when an accident happens that takes you out of commission. I wasn't ready for that moment either. Well, at least not until the day I fired someone on my team who was in the ICU. But now, having had that experience, I am ready, and you need to be ready as well. So when the unexpected does happen, you are ready to deal with it, even if you're incapacitated. And here's what I mean by the unexpected. It could be anything. Suppose a bad winter storm happens that locks things down for days. That's what happens to me here. Or a devastating hurricane hits your home province. I'll tell you right now, Hurricane Fiona is headed this way as I'm recording this episode. And it is scary because I don't know what's going to happen. We don't know at all what could be happening there. Forest fires happening on the West Coast are something that are going on more and more these days. Now, these are huge disasters, but even small accidents, like let's just say maybe your dog, we'll call her a cute little dog named Pepper. Maybe she runs so fast in the house, she knocks you over onto what is apparently the world's sturdiest coffee table, and you end up in the hospital having surgery to repair your elbow because that small accident actually broke your elbow in 3 places. Well, those days can happen to any one of us. Those disasters, big or small, can come about anytime. And when they do, they can wreak havoc on your practice and affect so many people, even people outside your business. But if you're not in a position to react or talk or to get help, what is going to happen? And how will those people know what is going on? The day I fired someone who had been in the ICU, that was the day I realized how critical backup and disaster plans are. And that meant when my dog Pepper did break my elbow in 2020 in 3 places in that exact scenario I just mentioned, I was ready, all thanks to that one experience of firing somebody in the ICU years before. We often don't think these bad things are going to happen to us, but experiencing any type of disaster, even a small one, can affect your practice a lot. This is why having a backup or disaster plan is critical to surviving those disasters, whether they're big or small. So today we're going to cover what factors private practice owners should think about and include in your own disaster or backup or emergency plan, whatever you want to call it. And it really doesn't need to be complicated, but I'm telling you here and now, you do need one. Even if you are a one-woman or a one-man show, you have to be ready for this. Now, before we get into these details, I really feel I need to explain this firing someone in the ICU situation, because I'm really not a heartless person. But it will also show you exactly why I came to realize how important backup and disaster plans are. So back in 2014, my business was booming. I had a team of 14 VAs working for me, helping doing the marketing support services for 40 clients. I was also running marketing boot camps and groups online. And it was time to hire a project manager again because my previous one had given me notice. It was very hard to run the business without her. So I'd done a 2-month search. I had narrowed down who I thought was a perfect person. She had the experience. She had the brain that thought like mine, which was really hard for me. And it was something that was important for me for filling this role. She could think strategically like me when it came to marketing. We had gone through all the onboarding, meeting the team, getting introduced to the clients, getting access in our project management system, access to passwords and other information about my business and clients. And if you brought on a team member at all, you know that onboarding can take a little bit of time and it's involved. So we've done all of this. And then day 1 of working together after all the training and the onboarding, it was Monday and we had our first meeting. And I have to tell you, I was so excited because she was going to be such a help to me in the business. And the meeting time came and she was a no-show. So I thought, okay, maybe she was late, forgot the time. We all do this. I mean, I mix up time zones all the time. I'm on a time zone no one knows about. So I try to tell everybody about Eastern time. I'm converting it in my head. And I will tell you, I've mixed up the time all the time. I get that. So I was giving her the benefit of the doubt. I messaged her, nothing. Emailed her, nothing. I was waiting in my meeting room for about an hour, still nothing. So then I sent another email and a text, a little concerned. I was a little worried. It wasn't like her. And I said this in my messages. Now, granted, I was judging this on less than 1 month of knowing her, but I wanted to be concerned because from what I had done and experienced with her to this point, it really was not like her. I went to Facebook and LinkedIn looking for activity, nothing. So the end of the day comes and I'm starting to get worried something's wrong. And then I kind of worry a little bit, maybe I made a bad decision. I'm worried that with all the access she had, maybe I'd trusted the wrong person. The thoughts went on and on. Day 2 came, still no contact. I did the phone, the emails, the text checks again, nothing. I went into social media, even into some of the groups that I knew she was in that I was part of, nothing. I searched in the news in her hometown. I was thinking maybe she was in an accident. I found nothing at all, nothing going on. And I really was worried for her. But at the same time, I was worried for my business and for my clients because their businesses are my responsibility as well. Wednesday came, so it's day 3 now. And my worry had at this point turned to total uncertainty and fear. And as the CEO of my business, I had obligations to my clients and my team. So I did the one thing I swore I would never, ever do in my business. I fired her via email. I had no other way to get a hold of her. Nothing was working. I sent it to her email, and then I set about the task of changing all the passwords, deleting her team email account, access to anything she had connected to me and my clients. And then I had to go change anything that she was connected to as well. My job is to protect my business and clients. So that's what I had to do. And I did feel horrible sending the email. And my husband, Marco, was so supportive, telling me I did the right thing. I had to protect my business and my clients. And I let it go because at this stage, I had no clue what was going on with her, but my business needed to keep running and I had to move on. 3 weeks later, I got an email, and it was a reply to one of my "Are you okay?" emails that I had sent. She was reaching out to update me. She had just been released from the ICU after a nasty fall on her icy front steps. She'd been in a coma for a couple days, and the accident had left her with some rehab needed, and she would not be going back to her business and her clients. I actually was not the only client she worked for, so there were other people probably in the same situation as me. She understood why I did what I did and wished me all the best. She apologized for not being able to reach out, and this is where my lesson came into play. She said her husband knew nothing about her work, her business, or her clients, and had no idea who to call. And because she was really quite incapacitated for several days, and even more than that, she had no way to tell him anything. So that's how I came to fire someone in the ICU. Again, I'm not heartless. I had to stick up for my business and my clients. But it's also why I'm a firm believer in having backup systems and disaster plans in place for your business. It is critical, especially for solopreneurs, which many private practice owners. You're often the one main element, the driver, the leader. You're the one person who keeps your business running. And like any practice owner or solopreneur, or even if you have a small or mid-sized team, that means you have people who depend on you, your clients, your team, your family. You're the one who needs to be prepared for the day that dang bus might hit you. And one of the first times I ever really used my backup disaster plan was the day my dog Pepper, yep, she's my dog, she's the name in my company, Pepper at Marketing, but she really did run me down in the hallway, knocked me over, and broke my elbow in 3 places. And when it happened, I'm telling you, I came down hard and I knew immediately I was hurt bad. I knew I'd hit my head. Things were going a little bit crazy as the family was trying to get me up off the floor and off to the hospital. But by the time we got to the emergency room, I knew this was really bad. And I will tell you, within an hour of hitting that emergency room, my team knew I'd had an accident. My clients knew. The students in my inner circle membership program knew that the session that day was canceled. And everybody was on alert, waiting to see what would happen because they knew the accident had happened. At that point, I really didn't even know that the elbow had been broken in 3 places. I just knew there was something drastically wrong with my elbow. So we didn't exactly know what was going on, but I had put the plan in place to prepare everyone. And that's because I have a backup disaster plan system at the ready so that if ever a bus were to hit me, or in this case, my dog were to knock me over, actions are going to happen to let my clients and my team know. And the emergency system that I put in place basically starts with my husband being the one to make a call to one member on my team, Patty. And Patty does everything else needed so that my clients and my team and the students in my programs are notified, because me not being there unexpectedly and potentially for a little while will affect them too. So I do this because of that situation where I learned firsthand from firing someone who'd experienced her own disaster that having a backup plan is really more about others who depend on you just as much as it is about you and your business or your practice. And it's something I've seen firsthand in more than 14 years in business, that many people do not have a simple emergency or disaster backup plan in place to make sure that the people who depend on them for their business know what's going on. I often think it's because potentially we don't see ourselves as needing these types of plans. And when I did some research back then on what to do and what to include and put in a backup and emergency plan, and I did a lot of research thinking, okay, what am I going to need? What do I have to have in place? But when you Google things like this, A lot of times, mostly what you're going to get is information on computer backup systems, which is important, or you're going to get plans and examples for large corporations. And nothing I found was really fitting for solopreneurs, those of us who don't have divisions and teams and departments and supervisors and team leads. A lot of what I found online is not applicable when you look for this information because, where am I going to meet my team offsite? They're all over Canada and the US. If there's a gas leak or a bomb, where do we muster to? Where's our muster station? Things like that. Well, for those of us who work primarily as solopreneurs, we're not really going to be having to enact something like that. Even when you're working virtually or in telehealth situations, as a lot of practitioners do these days, a lot of what you're going to find for these sample plans isn't going to apply. What does apply to us is how important we are to the clients we serve, how important we are to our team members and our businesses. These are the people that are depending on us to help them. And in your case, they're the people depending on you to help them with their health, their lives, and sometimes their businesses too. And if you're incapacitated for any reason, their treatment, or as it was in my case, their businesses could be at risk because of their reliance on you and your services. So you might not have the complex situations a large corporation needs to plan for with a backup or disaster plan. But I really believe you still need one as a practice owner, as a solopreneur, or even a small team, having a small team. It's as much a part of your business foundations, frankly, as your marketing foundations are that I'm always talking about. These are key things to helping you run your business and run your practice online and do your marketing. Those foundations are as important to you and your marketing and your business as having a backup or disaster plan is for you running your business as well. And if you're wondering what the marketing foundations are that I mentioned, and if you have them in place for your practice, I'll link to those in the show notes as well. But the important thing for you to understand here is that a system like this, a simple backup disaster plan, can be something that might help your practice survive even short-term unexpected disasters. So now that you understand this firing someone in the ICU situation and can see it from both sides, let's talk about what you should include in a backup or disaster plan for a private practice or solopreneur business, something for your own practice. So after I did this, I did a lot of work and I put a whole plan into place. And I'm going to share with you what those 5 main elements are in the plan that I have. It is simple, it's easy to do, and I do think it's very important for anyone who has a business to have something like this in place, especially for us solopreneurs that are out there working and we're typically the main person running the business. So the first element, number 1, is you need to identify a trusted source to enact your plan. So when you're creating this backup disaster emergency plan, whatever you want to call it, you really want to identify a trusted source. So it could be your spouse, it could be a friend, it could be a colleague, it could be your accountability partner. Your trusted source is the person who's going to make the initial contacts to your clients and team members to let them know what's going on, because they need to know what to do, even if you can't tell them. So you have to have some sort of trusted source that's going to be the first point of contact. And one thing I want to mention with this is you also want to review this choice of person on a regular basis too, because the last thing you want to do is have a plan based on someone who is no longer there or no longer trusted. Okay. So when you think about this, like if in my case, the way that I have it set up is Marco is the source, my husband is the source to tell a main person on my team. So Patty on my team was a trusted source. She's the person that will enact the plan. So Marco knows what to do. He has her information. He knows to contact her. And they've actually met before, so that helps. I would encourage you to make sure that you connect somehow those two people if you have a situation like that, so that if you have a family member who's going to be the person that says, hey, Kathy has had an accident, you need to tell the business people all of this stuff and the clients, then that trusted source knows exactly what's going to go on. I guess in some ways you kind of have two trusted sources, the person who's going to be the one to tell someone to enact the plan, or it may just be you calling them directly. I like to have the two pieces. So I like to make sure you have the one source that is going to be the person that is going to tell someone what to do. Now, if your spouse is capable of doing the tell some other people what to do, tell the clients, tell the team members, that's great. In my case, because of the setup that my business has, we have it set up so that my source of my husband will tell the trusted source team member who's then going to do enacting the plan. Okay. Number 2 is you want to have a list of people to contact. So it's not enough just to tell this trusted source, contact my clients and reach out to them and let them know what's going on and tell these other people that need to know too. You've got to actually have a record of these people and a way to contact them. So you're going to have to share a document or something that's going to have that information, a list of who needs to be contacted and how they get contacted. Now, you don't necessarily have to share that list with your trusted source ahead of time, but they have to have access to it and know where to find it. You can kind of think of this, and I know a lot of people don't like to talk about wills and things like that, but I know for me, we have a document for my mom. So my sister and I know where it is. We know where to find it, and it's got all her other information. We've not seen it. We don't know what's on it, but we know how to access it. So it's the same thing with your business. You want to make sure that if you're telling someone to enact a plan by contacting your clients, you have an updated list of clients. And that also means when I talked about in number 1, update on a regular basis your trusted source and check who that is. Same thing with your list of people. You want to update that and make sure it's current as well. The third thing that you need to have is an action plan that outlines the next steps and the what ifs. So this is going to be outlining what should happen in certain situations. How is your trusted source going to reach out? What will happen to the clients and their work? If you don't have a team, you may want to consider a partnership or a relationship with somebody that could potentially help if needed. You've got to make sure that your action plan actually includes what information to provide your clients, including any limitations to your work should something happen. You'll want to cover all these what if scenarios and have a plan for them. That one can be a little trickier to do. Oftentimes, it might involve a little bit of thought an idea of what to happen if this kind of situation happens versus this type of disaster or another one. I know for me, if we're out of power with this hurricane coming for several days, that's a very different situation than what happened with my accident with the dog, with Pepper. In that case, I was actually out for a week. I was in hospital. I couldn't move. I was on medication. I couldn't be working if I wanted to be working. So what if and the steps that will have to happen there, you have to kind of think those out specifically for your practice and what's involved and make a plan for it. It doesn't have to be really detailed when you start. You may want to change it and upgrade it as you go along, but at the very minimum, I want you to get something in place so that you are getting it and putting it together. Okay. Number 4 on this list of elements to include in a backup or disaster plan is account access and passwords. So you will probably need to set something up to give your trusted source access to some of your business systems and accounts. A lot of people don't think about it, but it is very important if you're in a situation where you're incapacitated and unable to access anything. You know, I could speak and say, call Patty, tell her that I've had an accident and have her contact the clients and the team. That's one thing. But what if I couldn't speak? What is going to happen then? So you have to know that there's certain things that that person may need access to. That's probably going to be part of your action plan. But you want to give at least somebody somewhere has to have access to this so that whether it's an accident, whether it's a bad disaster emergency, or even potentially your death. And again, I know we don't want to talk about this, but it is the reality. You want to make sure that the access someone might need to go in and close accounts or access things to close things off is able to do. It is something that really everybody should plan for in life, especially with all the online accounts of today's world. And when you think about it, in the old days, if someone were to pass on, mainly the only accounts you had to think about were probably bank accounts, utility accounts. But the online world is so different that you really have to think about having a plan to shut down your entire online presence if that is needed. I say this only because I had a situation in 2012 with one client who dropped off the face of the earth. I did a lot of checking, emails, phoning, and it took me a month to realize he'd actually passed away. I found his obituary online. And 6 months later, his wife reached out to me from one of my "Are you okay?" emails. And she'd been cleaning things up and realized he had all these accounts with his business and his work that we helped him do. And she had no clue of any of it. So we actually went in and helped her access everything and close down the accounts. She was going on our information because she had nothing from him at all. He hadn't shared anything with her about his business. And that's why I really think it's important that someone needs access to your accounts and your passwords if needed. Again, that will probably go into your action plan, and it may not be something you need to share with them until it happens. And the fifth element that you want to include is a long-term action plan. As a solopreneur, long-term could be more than a week. You're going to need to have a plan on how to manage your practice and your clients if you're unable to return to work for a week, a month, 2, even longer. You've got to be ready for the fact as well that your clients may not be able to wait for you. If you're doing programs and delivering group courses, they may not be able to wait for you either. So your backup plan for the long-term aspect of it may need to include ideas or thoughts on refunds to people for prepayment, different things like that. So sometimes involving a backup signing authority on your bank accounts may be something you need to have in place as well. Again, at the beginning, I want you to have at least a notification system here. So steps 1, 2, and 3. I know getting into 4 and 5 can be a challenge, but you really have to think and plan about this as if, what if the worst case scenario happened? That's what a backup disaster emergency plan is all about. So it is critical to be thinking about this for the long term here. As the CEO of your private practice, you have to be prepared for everything. And so the other thing that I want to make sure you do when you put all of these pieces together is to test the plan out as well. You can't just sort of put it in place and ignore it and hope it never happens. If you have a plan in place like this, you want to make sure that the people and the parties involved will know what happened. So even do a little bit of a test scenario. And I know that thinking about this is challenging, worst case scenario thinking. You don't necessarily want to go there. But I will tell you right now, having a plan like this will relieve so much stress for the people that are there to care for you if you're incapacitated or if the worst happens and you've left them behind. The last thing you really want to do is give them more confusion, more stress, and more sadness when they're already grieving, sad, and lost without you. I remember 100% how my client's wife was just so lost with everything that we were doing. And I know that that was just something that I said I never wanted to be my family. So putting these disaster backup plans in place are really important for your business or your practice. They are something that everyone should think about putting into place. As a small business owner, it is critical to have a plan for those things that you never know will happen, because that's the whole concept of disasters and emergencies. You don't plan for those, but you can plan for what happens if that disaster comes into play into your life. And really, when you think about it, the plan is not for you, as I said earlier. It's for the others. It's for your business. And sometimes thinking of it that way can make it easier to get your plan in place. Because really, we all as business owners owe it to our clients and the people we work with to have some sort of plan there so that if something goes wrong, you can still manage and move forward. And if the worst case happens, we know that they will all be taken care of too, including family and friends that are left behind. So I know this is getting a little bit challenging to think about, but let's recap those 5 elements you want to include in a backup or disaster or emergency plan for your private practice. 1, identify a trusted source to enact the plan. And in that case, you may have to have 2 people as your trusted source. 1 to tell someone else who is going to enact the plan, or just that one person who will start the plan. You're going to have a record and a list of people to contact. Number 3, you want to think about account access and passwords and how that will happen and what might be needed. Number 4, you want to have an action plan that outlines the next steps and what if scenarios in case that happens. And number 5, you want to include ideas for a long-term action plan. You want to be ready if this is going to continue on for a little bit longer than you might have ever thought it would happen for. And don't forget that final element of testing it out. Make sure your trusted person can access what they need to and can put the plan in place. Run a mock scenario. It won't bother your clients if you try it out and include them too. I promise you, they'll probably be happy to know that you have a plan and you're looking out for them. So that is your action step from this episode, is look at getting your own backup or disaster plan in place for your practice. Start with the first couple for sure, number 1 and 2, the trusted source and a list of people to contact. Think a little more deeper about 3, 4, and 5 and getting a little more involved in it. But I promise you, that bus I keep mentioning and talking about, it could barrel down on you tomorrow. Your dog could knock you down. You could slip on icy steps at any time. And none of it might ever happen. You can't plan for when a disaster is going to strike, but you can plan. And I believe deeply in planning for what happens if it does strike. And when you make the time to put this into place for your practice, it could actually be the difference between surviving a disaster or getting fired while in the ICU or having your business close down because there was nothing in place for anybody to know what to do. Your role as the CEO of your practice is to make sure your practice and your clients continue to thrive, and having a backup disaster emergency plan in place will help you do just that. I hope this has given you some thoughts about what to do for your own practice should that bus ever come barreling down on you or your dog knock you down. You just never know when it's going to happen, but planning for it will be the best way to make sure your practice thrives. Marketing Your Private Practice with Kathy C. offers you all the show notes and resources mentioned in our podcast on our website at marketingyourprivatepractice.com. You can find and connect with Kathy on Instagram by searching for Pepper It Marketing. We love to hear any feedback you have, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite player so you don't miss any future episodes. You can find all of our show notes and resources mentioned at marketingyourprivatepractice.com. Be sure to connect with me on Instagram at Pepper It Marketing and say hi. I'd love to hear any feedback you have, and make sure to rate and review the podcast and hit subscribe on your favorite player so you don't miss any future episodes.